Hi, it's Josh, your Goth Fragrance Bestie. I believe perfume is a language that speaks to us, not in words and colors, but in emotions and memories. In Goth Fragrance Dialogues, we will be listening to the people who channel and craft this language for us. In this episode of Goth Fragrance Dialogues, I travel to Seattle, where we'll be hearing from Jen at Immortal Perfumes. So, thank you for sitting down with me today, Jen. Your brand is one that I've been really excited to get a little bit more of your perspective because it's such a unique approach. It's a really strong concept and really beautiful perfumes. So
Thank you.
It's been really exciting.
I'm excited to have somebody else in the goth fragrance space. So thank you for doing what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much. I like to start with the same question for everyone, which is, what is your first memory tied to scent?
Oh, I tell this story a lot, so I'm sorry for anyone out there that's listening that's heard me say this like 7 times. But when I was a child, so I think I was 7 or 8 years old, this was 1992 Los Angeles, and my mother, she had a bottle of poison, but she had it under the cabinet in her bathroom, and it was in this box of other perfumes, and it just said Perfumes of Paris. And so I was a latchkey kid, and sometimes I would be home alone for a little while, and I used to like to rifle through her stuff like while she wasn't there. And I just remember one day I found this box and I was just like, oh, perfume from Paris, this is fancy. And I was just immediately drawn to the poison bottle because, you know, it looked like forbidden fruit and it said poison on it, and I was like, oh, that's so dangerous and cool. And I would just douse myself in this perfume, and I thought I was so sneaky because I'm, you know, like rifling through my mom's stuff when she's not there, but it's such a loud perfume that she absolutely knew what I was doing.
That's awesome. And no one ever, did she ever say anything?
She never said anything. And you know what's funny is I tell that story a lot because it's like part of my lore, you know? And she didn't even remember it when I told her recently, like in the last year. And she's like, I wore poison. And I was just like, how do you not remember wearing
Is that
poison?
not ingrained?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So from latchkey kid stealing poison to becoming an English teacher and then a perfumer, how did that arc take place?
So before the phrase "I do it for the plot" came around, I was doing it for the plot. My first job out of college was actually working at a psychic network. And I am not a psychic. Everybody always asks me that, but I worked in the marketing department. I've always been very into writing. And so my job was basically write celebrity astrology pieces. So I remember this one time before Patrick Swayze had passed away, it was his birthday and I was doing birthday astrology. And this really famous astrologer actually plagiarized the thing that I made up about Patrick Swayze's like chart or whatever it was. And to this day, that is like one of my defining professional experiences because I'm just like, oh, this famous person ripped me off. That's so great. I've made it. But yeah, so that was my first job out of college. And then I was like, you know what? I really want to do more writing. And very naively, I was like, oh, I know I can be an English teacher because you have so much free time as a high school teacher. Like that was silly. And that did not work out. I was always at very rough schools, and it was, I didn't have the temperament for it. It was really sad. There was a lot of violence, a lot of drugs ripping apart families, and it was too much for me. That was in both San Francisco and Los Angeles. And so my husband got a job offer up here in Seattle. I didn't know anybody, and I'm dating myself here. This is when Pinterest first came out as a website, and at the time I was kind of planning a wedding and, you know, planning my new apartment and everything, and so I was doing all these pins on Pinterest, and I found a tutorial on how to make perfume, and I was just like, oh, I'm gonna make my friend a birthday present perfume, and I made this horrible, like, it was god awful, like mess of a rose concoction. I made it as a solid perfume, put it in a locket, gave it to her. She was very nice and said she loved it. It was terrible. She was my maid of honor though, so we're still friends. But yeah, I basically, how I made that jump was just, I had always been interested in perfume, you know, starting with Poison. I grew up in the 90s. Witch culture was big. You know, we had The Craft, The Witches. Do you remember that movie? That movie scared the hell out of me. With Angelica
Charmed
Houston.
every afternoon.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Sabrina. So as, you know, somebody who grew up fancying myself a witch, I was just like, oh, now that I know how to make perfume, like I'm gonna make all these potions. And after we got married, my idea of a good time is going to historical sites. So I dragged my new husband across Europe and we went to, you know, King Henry's palace and Versailles. And in Versailles, they had a sign that had information about her personal perfumer, Marie Antoinette. And so then when I got home, very naively, I was like, I'm gonna make that perfume. And that was kind of how the brand started.
Very cool.
Yeah, very long-winded answer, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, shout out to the educators. Yeah, that's a very interesting transition though. It was, I'm gonna do this as a hobby, and then the more history kind of steeped into it. Very cool.
You know what's funny is around that time, I also saw, I think it was Martha Stewart. I think it was a Martha Stewart quote where she said something to the effect of, I was very naive and I don't think I would have done it had I known what I do now. And I think it was kind of the same for me. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, this makes sense. I'm going to do it. It'll work out. I don't know that I would do that at this age.
So, can you share a little bit of the story behind your flagship line, Dead Riders Perfume, and how it's evolved since its inception?
Yeah. So when I started, I was mostly on Etsy before I had my own website. And, you know, just coming from being an English teacher, I was really trying to marry all of my different interests together. And so I started by making these solid perfume book lockets just because I thought they were really cute. And I was like, oh, it would be so funny if I had a perfume in there called Dead Riders and it smelled like old books. So I did that and I put them out there. People really liked them. But what I was not prepared for was people were like, oh, I actually really like this scent. Can you make it as a perfume? And I don't know what was going on in my head, but I was just like, what? Like, people actually like this? Like, it's so weird. Nobody's going to buy it if I call it Dead Riders. That was not the case. I remember I was 7 months pregnant when it first went viral. This was late 2013. And I just remember my phone was dinging, like just like going off constantly. And that was the first time that Dead Riders really went viral. And that was, you know, pre-TikTok and everything. So at that point,
The Tumblr girls were all over
it was Tumblr. It was like, it was shared on different websites. So it's so fascinating to me how things have evolved just like in social media realm and like how things get discovered now versus back then. It like now to me, it seems almost like the dark ages, but ever since Dead Riders first kind of came on the scene, that was kind of my proof of concept. So I was just like, oh, I'm not this weirdo, like other people also like this thing. And so it felt like it gave me permission almost. And so I kind of, I like to do authors that, you know, I have not a personal connection, obviously, because they're long dead authors, but just like people that I've always admired. And then along the way, I also have customers who request specific people as well. So it just depends on who I am most interested in at the time. I'm always adding to it, but I also do other historical figures as well.
Right. And as a self-taught perfumer, what are some of the challenges that you've encountered in the early stages, especially, like you said, the dark ages before TikTok was telling us all how to do it?
Yeah, back then, it was almost like I believed in myself more. I don't know if that was just, you know, naivete from being younger. I just turned 40 last week, actually. But you know, back then it was just really hard to find any information. Like now you can go anywhere, you can take classes, you don't have to go to France. And so really back then it was just finding that information, like what materials are safe to use. Like I was having to, look through botany books and everything like that because there just wasn't a place for this information. So back then, that was the main issue that I had. Now, the main issue I would say is self-inflicted. Like it's very much imposter syndrome. When I was like, honestly, from 2012 to 2020, that was before my perfumes had gone viral on TikTok. And so virality in TikTok versus virality in Tumblr or, blog posts, news articles, whatever. And so basically before I was kind of in my own little bubble, I was on Etsy. I was just really perfuming and doing what I wanted to do and what was making me happy. But then in 2020, once I gained such a big audience, then I started to be like, oh no, like people are gonna look down on me for being a self-taught perfumer. I did have a weird interaction when I did the perfume trip to France last year. There was a French person, they were not trying to be mean. I think it was more of a language barrier than anything else, but they said something to the effect of, well, if you didn't go to school in France, then you're not a perfumer. And so that kind of like reignited that in my head. So I think that as I've gotten more attention, it is a little bit harder for me to be like, no, this is deserved. You deserve to be here. You're good at what you're doing. You know what you're doing. But because I was a self-taught perfumer, I get very like, well, I don't actually know what I'm doing. So.
And that's a thread that I've recognized in each interview with self-taught perfumers and indie perfumers, and that the idea of fragrance being centered in France. And
yeah.
That's a thread throughout the community, I think. Mm-hmm. So talking a little bit about your creative process and the industry itself, how do you approach creating a historically or perfume that's inspired by someone in history? And what kind of research methods do you employ to bring some sense of authenticity to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have always been a super nerd. I love to read. My idea of a good time is doing research. So that's always been a through line for me. In terms of how I pick the person, it's usually I just get inspired. Like I'll just go down a random rabbit hole one day and I'm just like, oh, this person is amazing. So I believe it was in like 2020, right before the pandemic really started and it was locked down here in Seattle. There was an exhibit in town that had artwork from Artemisia Gentileschi. And for those that don't know her story, she was this brilliant painter in Renaissance Italy, and she was basically the only woman painter of the time that really got a lot of attention. But unfortunately, she was sexually assaulted by somebody who worked at her father's studio. And she actually was able to get justice, and that was unheard of at the time because, it's still kind of unheard of right. for survivors to receive justice for that. So I just remember seeing her painting, and if you look up, I won't tell you what her paintings are like, just look them up. Just be prepared because there's a little bit of gore to some of them. But it was just like a light was shining in the room that was just like beaming towards me and like calling out to me to go look at her painting. And then when I read her story, I was just, I don't know, I just felt so connected to her. And so I started doing all this research. I started reading both historical fictions and biographies about her. I was looking at all of her paintings. And so that's kind of how I approach that. When it is a person where we know what they used, like we know the ingredients of their perfume, so Marie Antoinette, for instance, it's not so much that I'm trying to recreate the perfume, it's more like I'm trying to create a feeling. So like I might use some of the notes from the perfume, it might have a similar vibe, but it's not the same thing.
Very cool.
That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like Oceans of Time was one that really struck me because for like a Dracula-esque perfume, it's very easy to go like blood. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate that you didn't. You have this very like gothic romance thread I mean, it pulls through a lot of your
Appreciate
fragrances. Yeah, it pulls through a lot of them, but particularly that one and like Carmilla are so beautifully done, and they have the right atmosphere and the feeling without being heavy-handed in the kind of
Right.
the delivery.
Yeah, I like the word that you use there, atmosphere. I think when you're doing stuff that has a theme like mine, where it's history, so much of it just conjures images of mist and fog and all that, like the fogs of time and stuff. So I do feel like atmosphere, but not a room scent.
Right.
It's an atmosphere or a vibe that I'm trying to create more so than this is literally what they wore, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah, and that's such a distinct separation from more mainstream scents. So in an industry that's driven by trends, how do you kind of find that balance of everyone wants to chase trends, everyone wants that moment on TikTok that can be so scary but successful for a business,
Yeah.
and then keeping that authenticity that you have for your fragrances?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, I have always kind of had a chip on my shoulder and like, oh, I'm an outsider, like I'm not a part of this. And so kind of what I was alluding to before is before I went very viral on TikTok, I had not really engaged with the perfume community too much. I was just kind of in my little bubble, and I was seeing myself less as a perfume person and more as a person who was making perfumes specifically for people that were interested in literature and history. And so because I wasn't focused on trying to be a perfume person at the time, I think that really helped me because I very much was like, well, this is what I'm going to do. And so like that really helped me keep the authenticity. Now that I am more involved and enmeshed in the perfume community, which has been so awesome, like it's a wonderful feeling to finally feel like you're a part of a community and not necessarily just, like the outsider that I thought I was before. So within that, it is hard. It's harder for me now to see other things that are out and be like, oh, well, everybody else is doing this. Maybe I need to too. Like, it's definitely something that crosses my mind, but I have to really just say to myself, your instincts have always been good. You have to just, stay the course and keep doing what you're doing because that's what people come to me for.
Right.
You
exist in a really fun intersection of two major pieces of TikTok with booktok and fragrance talk.
Yes.
So I imagine the audience overlap you get is interesting.
It is. I also have always, since I started, I've always appealed to multiple generations. And so it's never just been very young people or very old people. It's been just a mix throughout. And so there's kind of a lot of code switching, talking between the different generations even, and interacting with them in a way that is both authentic to myself and being able to relate to them on a human level.
Right.
Because like I said before, I just turned 40. I have a lot of, much younger followers, and I'm not up on all the lingo and everything. So that's also another weird thing that's happening for me right now is when I first was starting in the perfume industry, I was always the youngest one, and now I'm not. And so it's something that I'm learning how to navigate right now.
Right. No longer being the youngest in the room.
Yeah.
Is a daunting challenge.
Yeah.
I know that from my day job. Yeah. Being enmeshed in kind of the intersection of TikTok and having to learn how to move between those crowds, are there any trends that you're seeing in the perfume world and niche perfumery that you find either interesting or concerning?
There's one thing that I was thinking about. It's something that I don't find interesting. And I don't know that if it's just specifically niche perfume, because I think it might be perfume in general. A lot of brands have the theme of, oh, this is my take on travel. And their whole thing is around perfumes that evoke the sense of a place. And I'm not saying that that's always a bad thing, but I don't know. I just like get so annoyed by brands like that because I'm like, I feel like I'm just watching a travel influencer go to, Italy or wherever and just be like, I have conquered Italy and this is what you're supposed to do when you're there. And so in perfume, it's like, I have been to Italy and so this is what Italy smells like. And I don't know, I just think that that's really weird because you're basically going to a place that you've not necessarily interacted with before and you're just like, this is it. This is, the deciding thing about that place and not necessarily related to the people who actually live there. I don't know if that makes sense, but I have just noticed that there are so many brands that are just like, this is from my travels to this place. And I'm like, okay.
Well, yeah, and there's certainly other problematic facets that emerge within that
Yes.
of being very monofocused or erasing culture and history from that view.
Exactly. And this is not a knock on French perfumes because I love French perfumes. I did a whole perfume trip to France last year, but it's mostly the French perfumes that I'm talking about right now.
Yeah, and we know exactly the kind of brands that are using words they shouldn't, using descriptions they shouldn't, not honoring where they're sourcing their ingredients from.
Yep.
Yep. Shifting gears entirely from that, because we can't solve that
Not today, at least.
Yeah. So you took the very daunting task of creating the Gothic perfume advent calendar.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how that concept developed and ultimately came to be?
Yes, this is actually a great time to talk about that. I don't know about you, but my TikTok feed, because Pope Francis just died, my TikTok feed has been a lot of not jokes about him, but jokes about what they call cradle Catholics versus converts to Catholics or people who became Catholic later in life. I am what you would call a cradle Catholic. So I grew up not in the church. Like my family has always been like not great at being Catholic, but we do all the things you're supposed to do, but we don't go every week is what I'm saying here. But so because of that, I really grew up around all of the saint iconography and, like the saint candles and stuff like that. And so for me, an advent calendar was always such a fun treat, during the holiday season. But I'm also a little goth kid, and I was like, it would be so great if I had a perfume calendar that was for the people that like the dark fragrances. And so that's why I decided to do it. And I found a company that was able to make such a beautiful box for it. Like if the box wasn't as hefty as it is, because it's very hefty, I don't think I would have done it. Because I wanted something that people could even reuse.
I do.
That makes me so happy. Sorry, I just hit the microphone. That makes me very happy because I just love the little drawers. Like you can keep jewelry, whatever in there. But so I was extremely excited to have that as a project. That's another through line with me. I always have to have different projects because it helps me still feel excited about my job and everything that I'm doing. And so that was really a joy to figure out. Not so much of a joy to put together.
Right.
Because you only have a limited window that you can do it. And as of last year, I had 36 perfumes. I've discontinued a couple. And that's something that I'm going to probably continue to do because I've just I don't know, I've been really bad about retiring scents. I always want to make everybody happy, and it's always hard for me to retire them because inevitably, since I retired the last 3 fragrances, nobody was buying them. And then of course, once I retired them, everybody's like, well, where's this one? Where's this one? I'm like, where were you last year? But sorry, I just went off on a tangent. I definitely had to have help getting those out. So Haven at Uncommon Smells, she has been helping me since December. I also had another assistant. Her name is Janae, and she is Beauty by Janae here on TikTok and Instagram. And so they really have kind of helped me in my next phase of becoming, I'm still doing most of the things myself, but I'm starting to delegate more so that I can do less of the day-to-day packaging of things and move into the next phase, which is, maybe I'm going to focus more on fragrance fittings where people come into my shop and I call it perfume therapy. I talk to them about how they want their perfume to make them feel and what vibes they're going for, and then we find them a scent. Things like that. I'm doing a lot of writing projects. So yeah, we talked about this at the beginning. I've always been a person that is doing things for the plot, and that's just kind of how it is. Like, I'm always trying to do new things just because it's fun for me. I like to use my brain.
Yeah, and it's important, from a business perspective, to be able to scale.
Yeah.
And you can't always be involved in every single piece.
Yeah.
Because you ultimately never finish all
Exactly.
the other things.
And I mean, that's another thing for me is I've been doing this for 13 years. That's a long time. There are a lot of newer brands that have been doing it less time and have, become these huge brands. And that's a great journey for them. That hasn't been what I wanted. Like, I kind of didn't want to get super big. Like, I do like being kind of that Etsy ethos of like, it's handmade, that you are talking to me, the maker. But I do think that there is some flexibility and there is some opportunity to scale in there where I'm still, very involved, but like maybe I'm not doing like all the minutia that I've always done.
Right. Looking at kind of the landscape of where you are currently, what are your aspirations? Seeing Immortal grow, or what are the next big chapters look like?
I honestly don't know, because in my personal life, I've had a lot of activities that I've done outside of this the last few years. And so some of those things have ended. And so in that time that things have ended, that's when I decided to do this shop. And then I started the Scent Strip, the new, it's like a perfume magazine for non-professionals, like enthusiasts.
Right.
So it's not necessarily just professional writers, it's anybody who loves perfume can write something. So I have been doing a lot of like trying different things out, and that's kind of where I am now in terms of like my shop itself. I definitely would like, maybe a bigger space, be open 7 days a week so people can come in whenever. Right now I can only work by appointment just because I don't want to be here all the time. And just, being more of a business that has a couple of employees where we're all, taking shifts and working together and doing all of that stuff. I do really like still having somewhat of a hands-on approach with my longtime customers, especially. But yeah, TBD, I don't know. And that's exciting for me because I have always been a person who is very anxious about not knowing the future. So I feel good that I can sit in that uncertainty right now and feel like something good will happen.
Excellent. When you think about how many other projects you have going on and kind of that unknown, how do you manage to stay inspired and innovate with your fragrances?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I think that's where those little projects come in handy, is sometimes you have to take a step back from what you're doing, and by doing something else, then you're like, eureka, I have the answer for what I was thinking about. And so for me right now, I released a new perfume, Queen of the Night, a couple of months ago, and it was something that I had actually created for my Paris trip last year. And then I was like kind of tweaking it and stuff. But then after I released that, I was like, I don't really know like which ones I want to do next. But then I remembered that this is my 13th anniversary. And so, for a little goth kid, you're 13. I was like, oh, I got to do something cool. So, because of that, I've been starting to sketch out some different things. I have some cool ideas. So I'm going to be releasing a new perfume in July in celebration of that facet. But yeah, for me, staying inspired is just about making sure that I'm not solely sticking to my niche, that I'm really exploring all of my other interests, that I'm reading widely and varied, and trying to just like take things in so that I can actually come up with new ideas. Because I think if you just sit there and you're only engaging with your bubble, like you're not going to be exposed to new ideas and new ways of doing things.
Yeah, that's a great point. Have hobbies. that's
Very well said.
That's how this came up. So, do you have any particular memorable milestones or experience in your perfume career that really impacted you?
Yeah. I mean, aside from those crazy moments of virality, so one in particular, Professor Perfume from TikTok. The first year that she was really getting started in things, she posted about my Pemberley perfume. And that was when I was not yet on TikTok. And I was very confused. I was like, where are all these hits coming from? Like, my phone is going off. I don't know where these people are coming from. And then when I realized what was happening and where people were coming from, I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm such a boomer at this stage. I don't want to learn another social media. Like, I had to learn or Instagram, like, no more. But so that was actually like, it turned out to be such a good thing because that was kind of what changed everything for me, because that was when I started to engage with the actual perfume community more.
Gotcha.
It also encouraged me to try to engage with different audiences aside from, just my specific niche that I was catering to before. And so that was really exciting to learn how to do that. And then once I started doing my own TikTok things, I really, at first I was trying to like kind of emulate what other content creators are doing. I was like, oh, here's a day in the life of an indie perfumer. And I don't know, I just wasn't interested in that. And I think people could tell because like didn't really get any traction. Then that was when I started doing the historical videos that I do now. And that's when people were like, oh, this is actually really interesting. And so it's kind of, it's almost like a loop. Like I get excited about these very interesting to me things. And then when I show people and they get excited, then it just kind of reinforces it.
Yeah.
And so really those have been kind of the big moments for me. And they've really I've been doing this for 13 years, but it's really been the last 5 years that things have really changed. And then also another big thing was when I did the Paris perfume trip last year. I'm always amazed that people like want to engage with me and talk about this stuff with me, or go on a trip with me. So I'm always very surprised by that, and just like honored that they would give me that opportunity and that they feel as strongly about things as I do. So that's been, I don't know, it's really validating and nice as a business owner to know that what you're doing is landing.
Yeah, I think something that you spoke to there that I find really interesting is the authenticity aspect. A lot of people, especially those of us that were little goth kids who felt we were outside and we didn't have people, being able as adults, even young adults, to find a community of people who that resonates with, we can all be the weird black sheep together.
Yeah. It's also what's been so fascinating for me, like with the social media piece of it too, is that people seem to appreciate us for who we are, but like I didn't recognize that before. Or maybe, I don't know, like maybe it's just different now because like as an adult you don't really care anymore what people think. So you're just more likely to be like, I'm just going to do what I want, and then that resonates with people. I don't know what exactly it is, but yeah, it's been really nice to be able to find my people and hang out with them and talk about things and then bring other people along for the ride.
Yeah, that's really, really excellent. What advice would you give to someone aspiring to either be a perfumer or be involved in the industry who wants to carve out their own niche?
Yeah. Just follow your own instincts and follow your own journey. Read as much as you can. Don't feel that you have to do a certain thing or that you have to get a certain degree, because there's space for multiple pathways of pursuing it. For me, it's always worked out to just kind of do what I'm interested in and be myself. And so I think that's true for most people, but it's like a really difficult thing to get past, your brain screaming at you like, no, you have to do step 1, step 2, step 3. You don't have to go to France to learn perfumery. You can go to the Institute for Art and Olfaction, and they have classes you can take over Zoom. You could read Mandy Aftel's books, which is something that I did. Like there's lots of different pathways, and the most important thing is to remember that you have your own unique story to tell. And if you really believe in yourself and believe in your story, then other people are going to recognize that in you.
Excellent. What legacy do you hope to leave in the world of niche perfumery?
I mean, I just want people to think of me as a kind person who wanted to just be in community with everybody. I don't necessarily feel that I need to have, I mean, actually, okay. When Dead Writers first really became popular, like the first couple of years, I had this whole like crisis of, oh my gosh, I'm a one-hit wonder. That's all people are gonna know me for. One, that wasn't true. And two, even if that was the case, and 100 years from now, there's an entry about me in a perfume book and it's about Dead Writers, I would be so honored that anybody engaged with something that I made. Even Dead Writers is not my favorite perfume, by the way. So like it used to really irk me that was the one, because I think I have better perfumes. But anyway, now I am past that, and I love Dead Writers for what it is and what it means to other people, especially the booktok people or writers. I have so many authors that like to use it, like wear it while they're writing. And so honestly, like any memory of me would be an honor.
Awesome. You mentioned a little bit earlier you're working on a few things. Are there any particular themes or literary elements or anything like that we can look forward to seeing in the future?
Yeah, so this one is not a literary one. This one is a historical one. And all I'm going to say right now, and maybe people can guess based on this, feathers and gunsmoke.
Interesting. Well, we'll leave it with a cliffhanger. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, it was
And
wonderful to talk to you.
can you tell the folks watching at home where to find you online and in person?
Yeah, basically at Immortal Perfumes everywhere. Immortalperfumes.com is my website. I run all my social media accounts, so you are talking to me wherever it is that you reach out. And if you want to visit in Seattle, I have a perfume shop. You just have to book an appointment at my website, and we'll geek out on perfume together.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Goth Fragrance Dialogues. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of fragrance and the incredible stories behind the scents that we explore. As always, if you want to learn more, be sure to check out the links in the description for more details and ways to connect with our guests. And don't forget to support their work. It's all about celebrating creativity and passion. If you're loving this content, regardless of what platform, please subscribe, that way you never miss out on a new episode. We've got more exciting stories, insights, and interviews coming your way. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Josh, your Goth Fragrance Bestie. Keep exploring the world of scent, stay inspired, and we'll catch you next episode.